Welcome to Creative Arts Apothecary. I am your host, Marina Tselner, and I am so delighted to introduce my guest, Dr. Fred Luskin. Fred is an author of this marvelous book, Forgive for Good, and there are more in the series. Yeah, and he is the director and founder of something very special called the Stanford Forgiveness Project. Welcome, Dr. Luskin.
Thank you.
Really
It's
good to have
still
you here.
no, but it's still it's a remarkable thing when people hold up a book I wrote. No, I mean it's you can't take it for granted. It's a little weird also, and like it's we all got to do something here. So it's nice if I've been able to do something that's of use. You know,
Absolutely.
a good thing.
Agreed. Absolutely. And you're very generous with your time and with your knowledge. This was a journey. It began with a journey that you went on for your own development. And you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I got to share this with the world. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you to the power of forgiveness?
I mean, the strongest part for me was how badly I was at forgiving. And so much of the Stanford Forgiveness Project was oriented to healing myself because I was an angry mess. And it's humbling and it's true. I had a couple of painful experiences that I made far worse by being such an idiot about them. I held on to shit long past its due date. And a couple of situations like brought me to my knees. And so like I almost had to learn how to do this. Secondarily, when I was going to get my doctorate, I did a research project on forgiveness trying to prove that the stuff that I had done to heal myself would be of some value to somebody else. But the primary impetus was just an utter failure at figuring out how to move past people who had harmed me. So,
And before we go on much further, I thought it could be helpful if you can define for us what is forgiveness and what is it not?
forgiveness is, I mean, the best definition I had nothing to do with. It's giving up all hope for a better past. And that is really profound. A woman whose daughter was murdered, she coined that about 20 years ago. She lived in Marin, and her daughter had been killed brutally. And I met her as part of a forgiveness kind of thing. But forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. And there's something so profound and intelligent about that. Because instead of arguing with your past, you make peace with it. And that's the difference. I spent years arguing with my past, like, I mean, bitterly and resourcefully and harshly and self-righteously and determinedly and all sorts of other shit. But it never led to any kind of peace.
Hmm.
It just led to more argument. The other definition that we cultivated is forgiveness is making peace with the word no, which means you finally stop fighting all the ways that life didn't turn out the way you want, and you stop demanding that things always are the way you think they should be. You make peace with no. So it's a form of growing up. Instead of throwing a hissy fit every time you get a no, which is what most of us do, you recognize that the hissy fits are not making you happy, and you make peace with the fact that things often don't work out the way you want. So, two ways of saying similar things, but those are the two definitions of forgiveness that I am comfortable with.
And it's not in any way making light of the offense or the wound. It's really just about not carrying it with you or into the present, or I mean everything that you just said. I appreciate that it's you. The impact is there. You help people to move forward. Yeah.
Most of us have stories at the tip of our tongue as to why life has treated us in a certain way where we don't have to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
Almost everyone has bitterness, myself included, that we have right at the tip of our tongue to explain why it is that we don't have to be our best self. And we whip those stories out whenever things happen now that we don't like. We just whip those stories out, and often we try to punish the people who we think are the writers of that story. I have a partner, I punish her for things that she did or didn't do in the past. It's a human ugliness. Forgiveness takes away that weapon from us.
Mm.
So we're no longer so hostile and destructive in our world. That's what it is.
What drives you in your work? What keeps you going on this subject?
What was that?
What drives you in your work? What keeps you going on this subject?
I don't know how much keeps me going anymore. It's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What what kept me going for a very long time was maybe I could help a little bit of peace. That I saw what it did for me, and I saw how much more work I still had to do. So I was the big laboratory of, yeah, Fred, you forgave X and Y, but you ain't so hot with Z. And I saw just by teaching how many hostile people they were who just walked around with all these self-righteous grievances. What has discouraged me of late is all the grievance politics everywhere, where it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you are, you want to feel like a victim, and you want to make believe that there's all this history of oppression and negativity and victimhood. And it has made grievance way more culturally acceptable than it was for a while. And so that's been discouraging, that forgiveness has less cultural cachet than it did. But it's still the human hope for, like everybody else, I was hurt. And like everybody else, if I want to pick out parts of my past, I can exaggerate them into my main story, and I can make my group the victim. We can all do this, every one of us somewhere. But it's not how we heal this world at all. And it's not how we contribute to certain kinds of growth. So I've been to different parts of the world where horrible things have happened. When I've tried to help people say, yeah, horrible things happen, that's true. And they need to be stopped. but they're not going to be stopped by me hating them. And that's just an eternal question, eternal for human beings all over the planet throughout time. We mistreat other humans all the time. And we have to decide how much of our own victim status we want to hold on to so that we contribute to that hostility, or we contribute to painfully trying to let it go and trying to make a little more peace. It's not easy.
Beautiful. Mm-mm.
It's never been easy. It will always be hard.
Hard but worth it. Hard and worth it. Worthwhile. Yeah. Um, I have questions for you, but I also just so excited to connect with you because your book speaks to me so much, and just from the premise that where you suggest like don't take it personally. I was like, how do you not take it personally? And you're like, realize maybe you can say.
You know what's so challenging about that is the reality is things are both personal and not personal at all at the same time.
Mm.
It's not either or, it's both and. So if you take things too personally, then your viewpoint is distorted and you don't see things clearly. So when I blame my partner for X, Y, and Z, part of it is personal. She's done things to hurt me. Other parts of it are not personal at all, which is if you're in any relationship, people are going to do things that are challenging. And two, a lot of the shit they do is just because they're crazy like you are. So there's a personal piece and an absolutely impersonal piece to everything. When we exaggerate the personal piece, that needs to be quieted. Some of us exaggerate the impersonal, so we never do anything to change what's going on, and those people need more personal.
Mm.
The healthy can see both. So like in a relationship, yeah, your partner may be a total pain in the ass, but every partner is a pain in the ass in some way. So it's both and. It's not either or. And the question is, where are you off balance?
Mm.
Either taking it too personally or not taking it personally enough. That's the question.
That's fantastic. Absolutely. Um,
The more subtle answer.
that's a great invitation too, because absolutely to find the balance. That's a great question for you to say where where do you where do you need more of or less of? That's great. Absolutely.
Well, you'll see by how you react.
Mm.
Because some people deny personal, they're always saying they didn't mean it, or, they're always making excuses for things. So those people are too much in the impersonal. The rest of us are always shouting about how terrible everybody else is because they've hurt us. So we're stuck in the too personal.
Can you share a little bit about the process of creating healing and happiness through forgiveness?
Being a human being is not easy. I mean, we take a body that's going to die. Everybody we know will die. There is tremendous competition on this earth for resources. So it's a very tough environment to be a happy human being. It is not easy. In order to navigate this, you have to have a creative mind. If you just see all the horrors and dangers and problems, you'll become despairing or angry. So you need a creative point of view that is thoughtful, coming up with new ideas, not stuck in the past, capable of being present. All the aspects of creativity are required by everyone to be happy. The forgiveness piece, again, if you're not careful, you will buy too much your personal, your tribal, your group hatreds, and you will be lost in identity that is too negative. And so that will stifle your creativity. And so forgiveness helps unblock the
Mm.
ability to be present in your own life. Otherwise, you just drag in the past. And so that's how I would answer um, that creative healing. It's a sign of hopefulness that I can be in the present and be okay. I hope that's a reasonable answer to you.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that you talk about the present, because specifically in the kind of work that I do is very intuitive, and we sit with ourselves. It's meditative, and it's a grievance can make it hard to sit with yourself, whether it's a grievance against someone else or a grievance against yourself. It seems critical. I don't see any way around it except for through it, really dissolving it. And your answer, your work addresses that.
I know my own how my creativity is stifled when I'm angry
Mm.
or when I'm blaming. It's such a small box, and it's so rigid that when I was writing, or even when my mind was coming up with all this stuff, creativity is, there's so many forms. It's not just art. It's a way of looking at life where you're open, and forgiveness sometimes is really needed. Otherwise, you're not looking at life, you're just regurgitating the past. So that's my answer to you. And I
And do you,
like I like the question.
oh, I'm glad.
Yeah, I do.
Do you have a creative practice, a specific creative practice that informs your work?
Am I working on anything specific now?
Hmm.
That's a good question. My teaching has moved towards, I do most of my teaching now, believe it or not, at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford.
Huh.
So, and a lot of my work now is in corporate America. And I'm being forced or choosing to adapt these concepts to people whose interests are more surface and more like just how do I function in life, not how do I do deep healing or how do I take people who have been desperately harmed, but like how do you include meditation or forgiveness or compassion to being a normal human being, going to work and going home and trying to be a nice person. So it's less intense but more broad and requires me to be gentler because there's no There's not that deep wounding. There's just normal people in normal life with normal issues. And so it's good. At my later age, it's forcing me to grow.
Mm.
So that's the goodness in it. The challenge for me, honestly, it's piggybacking on what you just asked me, but it made me think more deeply about it, is the human issues are all the same. And we tend to try to make our issues special. So you're a woman, I'm a man, I've had arguments with who has it worse. So a woman might say, well, we haven't cracked the glass ceiling. And a man might say, yeah, but right now, men aren't graduating college anywhere close to women, they're dying younger. So you could have two genders fighting. But underneath that is people with identifications about small parts of themselves that want specialness and want to have their pain heard. Um, One of the things that I evolved over the years is that almost everyone wants that. And it's a blessing and a curse. Because yes, you want your particular identification honored, and you want to recognize that it's simply a temporary identification in a long history of human suffering. And if we're not careful, we just end up in our little tribal worlds thinking that we're the ones who are picked on, and we don't have compassion for all the other suffering that's everywhere. And I'm going to say that the challenge for me has been to open to that as much as I can, that it's not just my suffering or my group suffering, it's the suffering that human beings feel and inflict upon each other. And that's a really tough ask, is to get people to listen to each other and say, yeah, I mean, I'm just using women and men because you and I are sitting here across from each other. Clearly, women have been mistreated. Clearly, men have been mistreated. So the deeper human difficulty is, how do we forgive and make peace with what our suffering is? How do we ask for forgiveness for the suffering that we have caused? And how do we, this is even more challenging, how do we try to lower the barriers that we have created between ourselves and other people?
Mm.
Those are tough questions. And I like to believe, this related to like the creativity stuff, that the people who might live more creative lives, maybe they'd be less stuck in tribal hatreds. And maybe they'd be less stuck in their limiting identities because they've allowed parts of themselves to flourish that may keep them less trapped. But if anything, that's my current interest, and who knows, But it's when I do the work for the Graduate School of Business and we bring hundreds of people from all over the world, that's the work. We're different, but we're all the same. Anyway, that would be it. I sense you trying to ask me, like, what's up for me. and what's new for me and what's rich for me and also what's deeply challenging.
Mm.
And that would be a really strong, true answer. It's deeply challenging.
Well, thank you for opening up to all of us and sharing, and for the work that you do. I mean, are there some actionable steps that you can? I know you have your heal method. I wonder where it stands these days. Are there some actionable steps that you can recommend for people
Yeah,
to
like
go through this?
how do you actually do this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty simple, but not easy. The first is, and the most important, is to be grateful for what you have. So grievance is the opposite of gratitude. Those are the poles. Either I say thank you for my life, or I complain about my life, or some mix. But the opposite of grievance is thank you for whatever it is, whatever the spirit or universe has given me. Thank you as best I can. And even if it's given me a lot of shit, at least say thank you for what I can. It helps keep it in balance. So that's one. Two is to calm myself down when I get angry. It's nobody else's fault that I'm angry now. That's on me. They might have done terrible things. You can't do the work that I've done and come away thinking that human beings are just kumbaya nice people. They're not. They do terrible things to each other. But if I'm angry about it, that's about me, not them.
Mm.
A caveat to that is short term, anger makes a lot of sense. Long term, it's toxic. So if you lie to me, I'd be an idiot if I wasn't angry for a while. If I stay angry, then I'm an idiot. So that's how it goes. So be grateful. My bad if I'm long-term angry or I create a grievance personality, that's on me. You got to quiet that. Three, I have to remind myself of two simple things. Everybody suffers, and life wasn't meant to be easy just for me. Like two very central cognitive things. Like it's not just about you, Fred. And last is I need to do everything in my power to not tell too many stories about how I personally have been victimized. You want to limit as much as possible stories of victimization so you can tell stories of strength, not weakness. Those are the four practices that lead to forgiveness.
Beautiful, beautiful.
You
Um,
know, they work, they're simple, but they're not easy. You know, they've done investigations of heroes, both male heroes and female heroes. Male heroes tend to run into burning buildings. Female heroes tend to stay up for 4 nights without sleep, nursing their children. They're both heroes. That's one place where gender studies has been really essential because they used to think that heroes were mostly men until they started looking at what people actually did. And it turns out that women do more like family oriented, interpersonal heroism, and men do much more bravery and running into burning buildings and, saving towns or whatever it is. But they're both heroic. But when they ask heroes at some level, why'd you do it? They give different variants of the same answer. Either my parents taught me to do the right thing, or what else could I do?
mm,
You know? Somebody needed help. Whether it was a 9-year-old or a 49-year-old, someone needed help. It had to be me. Um, I think the right question for everybody is like, well, what are you doing to be heroic? What are you doing in your little patch of this world to maybe make a positive difference somewhere? I think that's our key question for our life. Can we help somebody? And it can be your kids, but it's not forcing your kids to go to Stanford. That's not heroism. It's sacrificing for your kids. That's heroism. It's resisting the urge to brag about your kids because you live in a wealthy area. That's not heroism. Your heroism is to shut your own ego up so you do what's best for your kids, not for you. But I'm going to say that finding our little everyday heroism, that's an important question. So I tried to find mine.
Well, thank you. Thank you very
I
much.
know I'm not directly answering exactly some of the question, but I'm giving you the answer that I think is relevant if you're going to ask me questions.
That's great. Yes, absolutely. My intention is just to keep the conversation going, to keep the hope going, and I think it's beautiful what you do.
20 years ago, my book publisher gave me media training because I didn't know how to talk to the media. I told the truth and I answered the questions that they wanted, and they told me that's not valuable. So they gave me media training, and one of the key aspects of it was to say, no matter what they ask you, you know more, answer what you want to answer, as long as it's as long as you're not giving tax advice, Fred, because you can't. But I took that to heart and I became a better interview because I don't know. I tried to answer what was relevant for me at the time because I figured if they're going to spend 45 minutes talking to me, that was helpful. I hope that makes some sense.
Absolutely. It really resonates with me, and I'm certain it'll resonate with the audience also. And if they want to follow your work, your book is available and you're online. We'll link this video to your website, and good luck. Good luck with everything that you do. And thank you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate, honestly, you have a very warm, respectful smile. So I could feel the warmth and respect, and that gave me the freedom to maybe be a little more open.
Wonderful. It's honey from my heart. I'm happy to
I
hear
felt
it.
it. So I thank you for that. It was seen and received and appreciated. Bye bye, Marina.
Bye, Fred. Thank you.